Hello, YouTube / podcasts out there. Well, whatever podcast player you're using. This is Shade Slayer Ace Attorney with my first ever podcast segment / YouTube segment. Before I begin, I would like to address this awesome custom art you're seeing on your screen right now, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. This awesome fan art comes from Christian Cotter, an awesome freelance artist that I found via YouTube / Twitters. I paid him money to make me some awesome fan art, and as you can see, it was well worth the money. This is a shout out to you, CC. Well, not Creationist Cat, but Christian Cotter. But it's the same letters, so as you can see, this guy deserves some love, and I would definitely like to give him a shout out here. Please follow him on the Twitters. I will give you his site info / his Twitters in the notes of this video. Now, it's been difficult to put together videos for a while for me because I tend to go off on tangents. I tend to lose my frame of mind because I am extremely ADHD. But today, I have a very simple segment that I want to do, and this will be my introduction to my channel, sort of. Before I begin, I would like to state that I am interested in discussion. That is why I want to make this channel. I would like to have productive discussion. And because of that, I would like to point out that not anybody, that means you or me, nobody out there is completely and totally rational all the time. In fact, to be rational and skeptical requires a lot of energy, and, well, I have moments where I cannot be rational, and I'm sure you do too. I also am not perfect, because nobody is. It's not a judgment, it's just a statement of fact. And the problem out there is that a lot of people tend to assume that arguments from authority are the only way to go, and that certain types of arguments are more effective. Now, let me be clear. I think that one of the biggest problems that is plaguing today's discourse is this idea that winning an argument is the reason to have them, and that when you're in an argument, that the idea of opposing someone's argument is more important than actually having a discussion. And I noticed this. I noticed that debates are a little more than theater between two sides, and that both sides' supporters generally agree with what their person is saying. You can see this on YouTube debates or even presidential debates. Because in the end, it's not actually an argument between two sides. There is no real accountability being thrown around either face. And despite the fact that sometimes I do think people are trying to have a productive discussion, I think that it's rarely the case that both sides come into a debate or an argument with the best motives or even the idea of being fair and balanced. So I think that there's this unfortunate need to pwn your opponent, which has spawned, I think, the skeptic community on YouTube, this idea of and it's at first it was something that was used to throw around against creationists and crazy religious people, but soon it expanded to the social justice community. The problem is that this sort of soundbite culture, the idea of clipping and editing videos in order to present the best possible case, sort of like this idea of advertising. You only show them what you want them to see. This, of course, provides a very one-sided view of any subject. And it's difficult to muddy through more nuanced discussions. Furthermore, not everybody has the ability to go into these discussions for long periods of time. But in general, I think that the idea that arguments are made to win or to pwn your opponents has been really destructive to discourse, and of course, in terms of pushing forward more, good change and stuff that actually helps people, and getting people to understand ideas. And no matter how much people claim to be, to be dedicated to ideas of rationality and free speech, the reality is that there are hundreds of different ways in order to use unfair tactics in order to give yourself an advantage. And in general, videos are a great example of this. They allow you to clip out parts that are not that helpful to you in order to provide the best and strongest possible argument. There are also hundreds of different things you can look to provide less nuanced and more persuasive arguments for your side. You can find evidence for pretty much any theory you might have and use it as evidence for your side. And in fact, in many ways, it's a problem. It's a problem because attention, as Peter Coffin would say, is the lifeblood of the marketplace of ideas. This idea that the more you can get your ideas out, the more you say it, the more you repeat it, the more mentions, likes, and views it will get. And so we need to acknowledge the flaws in the actual system and the flaws in the arguments and the style of debate people have. And also we need to be willing to be proven wrong. We need to be willing to go out there and actually be willing to change our mind. And I think that that's difficult. I don't think that many adults are willing to make that decision to be open to changing their mind. And this is both for liberals and conservatives. I don't think we all have a monopoly on good sources and pure facts. And because of that. And so really the point of my channel is to educate people as best I can, but also to be educated myself. I want to learn from people. I want to figure out new sources, learn new about different studies, understand where people are coming from. And this leads to the next part of it, which is that I think that people underestimate how much listening and actually trying to reach out and understand where people are coming from, how important that is in persuading people. I think that just trying to help people realize that you're not against them or that you actually want to help them, that convincing people you're on their side is really important in order to foster discussion. And also understanding that divisiveness, that is arguments, conflict, and all that, aren't necessarily bad things. And that in general, it is healthy to have that, because problems don't get solved unless they're brought up and properly given solutions. And solutions don't come from consensus. That's not how it works. The real world doesn't work like that, and neither does certain things. And so when you narrow the discourse, you make solutions less effective. And so that's a problem. So, and I'm really reaching out to those who consider themselves center-left or centrist, or people who maybe not agree with what they would call the alt-right, or even what they might call the alt-left, regardless of how I dislike that term. And especially people like Sam Cedar at the Majority Report, people who are dismissive of those of us who may criticize the Democratic Party just as much as we go against conservatism, because we see conservatism as being part of the centrist Democrats as much as the right, and that is seen as not helpful to getting our stuff passed. Now, but this also doesn't mean, well, let me just take a moment to really put this out there. I think that empathy is the best way to connect to people, and I think that when you're condescending, when you're treating them as if they're Neanderthals, I think that a large part of what has turned people who are more working class away from the left is condescension, is this sort of contempt for working class that has come just as much from the left as it has from the right. And that sort of contempt, that lack of compassion, that sort of bullying people into following you is not the way to get support. And I would say that that's also not the way to get support from people on the right. That's not the way to get them to follow you. You misunderstand what motivates people if you do that. Because I don't think that all the people on the right are motivated by hate. I don't think so at all. I think that appealing to emotions is something that both sides do to a certain degree, but that bullying, that is, the idea of trying to force somebody to fall in line, is something that makes people bristle no matter what. And that's a problem I've seen in many people on the left, and that is that no matter how smart you think you are, when it comes to communicating with people, you're a novice. You're a novice because you refuse to speak in words that normal people can understand. And I do mean normal people. I mean people who maybe didn't have a college education. Maybe they don't understand big words. Maybe they don't spend a lot of time reading. And you can't judge them for that. You can't do that because you're not going to communicate with them. And the biggest problem facing those on the left today is being able to communicate with people who maybe aren't from an Ivy League school or didn't go to college or don't spend oodles of time reading philosophers and all that stuff, because you can't communicate with normal people like that. Not everybody knows about that stuff. Furthermore, you cannot claim to be more enlightened, you cannot claim to be all-knowing, and you cannot deny that we are all ignorant about certain things. Appealing to experts just because they call themselves experts isn't the way either. So the point is, I'm just asking for more compassion, really. We all need to be more compassionate towards people and understand where they're coming from. And I think that that's where the strength in the left and collectivism comes in, because individualism, as silly as it is, individualism doesn't really work by itself. People like to feel like they're connected to other people, regardless of what the right might say or what people who claim that pure individualism is human nature. That's not how it works. Not everybody can get by on that, and it's just not the way it works. We like to be connected to other people, whether we like it or not. And even those who are extreme rightists, you know, they have connections. They have a group too, and they're connected to that group, and they value that group. Why do you think the alt-right is there? The alt-right is there because they have a community that they can belong to and feel safe with. They have their own safe space, no matter how much they tell other people that they're whiny little bitches for wanting safe spaces. But see, that's the thing. So anyway, I know I've rambled for a while. Please subscribe if you like this sort of thing. Definitely reach out to Christian Cotter and see if you want to get him to make him some art. I have my blog linked as well as my Twitter, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I know this was still kind of like a clusterfuck, but I really hope you enjoyed it. And viva la revolution.